Right, ladies and gentlemen, there is an interesting story that most people have not been talking about, yet it is key for both our politics, economic, and our governance. And this particular story rotates around the Ikolomani gold mine, and now the deaths that total up to 5 that has been recorded as a result of the resistance that is coming from the residents to this particular British company called Shanta, that President Ruto's team allegedly have gotten into a deal with to mine gold in Ikolomani. So this move is going to see 800 families being displaced from around 337 acre land, and the gold that is supposed to be mined is worth 383 billion from the statistics that Natembea now says, and only 3 billion has been set aside to actually compensate the 800 families that will be victims as a result of this compulsory acquisition. Now, if you're joining the People's Media for the first time, please hit the subscribe button because this story will follow shortly. But let's start this story from the very beginning. There is a 680 billion deal for a British company called Shanta to actually mine gold in Kenya. Their point of mining is Ikolomani, somewhere in the western region. Now, the land that this particular British company is supposed to use as an open quarry is 337 acres worth. Now, this particular 337 acre land will see 800 families removed as a result of compulsory acquisition, and after the removal of these 800 families, they will be paid 3 billion as part of the 383 billion which will be the revenue expected from this particular mining deal. Now, residents have resisted this move by government because they are saying that the government is not following due procedure. Later on, when we are taking a look at the statements of Malala, which are revealing a little more about this particular deal, you would realize that the construction of the gold refinery plant started last year before the government even announced that gold was in Ikolomani. So the government started a refinery plant before doing a public participation with the locals, or even before declaring nationally that there was gold in Ikolomani. Then they declare that there is gold in Ikolomani, stage public participation process, and do not pay 800 families, yet they have started evacuating them. So the residents have actually refused to this particular move, saying this particular gold mine is in their land and they will not leave their land. They hope to die in their land, and others have actually lived up to it. They have died right in their land. Now, leaders are absent when residents need them most. We have seen pictures from Ikolomani, videos from Ikolomani being shared through social media, where residents are now calling upon politicians to show up. They are asking, Mudavadi, where are you now when we need you the most? They are asking, Wetangula, where are you when your people are being killed as a result of a British company that is coming to actually, interrupt the livelihood of the Luya people? Now, others are saying that the government is trying to treat the interest of the white people superior to the interest of the native of the Luya people. And of course, this being a capitalistic country, the British government seems to have more capital compared to the Luya people, and that hence is what now the resident is saying. The resident is saying that government is prioritizing the white company over his own life, and his own life has been the life that has been living in this Ikolomani land since time immemorial, after the ancestors have also lived in that land since time immemorial. Now, residents have refused to move, as they said, and they have held their ground that they will die there. Residents have also called the public participation as a sham. This was very interesting. They were called to a public participation, and because they had known very well that this particular public participation was not going to put into play their particular statements and was only going to be a platform where the government statements were going to be stamped upon them. So by 10 a.m. they had arrived at that particular place to have that particular public participation going on, armed with crude weapons. So the government, of course, and the NEMA officials felt afraid when the locals arrived armed with weapons, and so police interrupted the public participation, and as a result, other people were injured injured and others died. So this public participation, they are saying, is something that is not going to take into consideration their view, because as a community they believe that the deal to have this Ikolomani gold mine going on is something that has been struck elsewhere. Listen, if the government started organizing an oil refinery plant as early as last year, then of course the residents might not be wrong to feel like this is a deal that has already been sealed, and their involvement in any form of public participation is just to meet the NEMA requirements and to tick the boxes that locals were consulted. Now residents protested, burnt down a school compound and the administration block after the police interrupted their staged public participation, and during that particular process the OCS was in the mix. So the OCS tried to draw his weapon, which was a loaded pistol, and it fell and the citizens took it. At that time, now it changed from protest to a security issue in Ikolomani, and by evening 4 people had died. Now this tension in Ikolomani keeps going on. There are residents of the western area who feel like this is their ancestral land, this is where they've lived since time immemorial, and irrespective of whether or not gold is in this place, a proper process needs to be followed, which also puts into consideration the attachment that they have to this particular piece of land, and compensation to be fully facilitated before the government asks them to exit this particular piece. What is the government move? The government move is that they do not want to discuss any compensation beyond what is already structured within the 3 billion budget that they have. Other than that, they have started evicting this part of the 800 families out of this 337-acre land to make room for the Shanta Company to start its operation. So this conflicting approach to the gold in Ikolomani has led to the death of 4 people and more, and the tension in that place still keep piling up. Now the government and the police, just like a scapegoat, just like they've always done, have now blamed MCS. The government blames MCS that have been accused of financing the demonstrations, saying that the people of Ikolomani are not demonstrating out of their own will, and they are demonstrating as a result of the influence of certain politicians, including MCS. This reminds me of sometimes back in June 25th, 2024. You see, while people are very aware of the fact that demonstrations occur spontaneously. Demonstrations occur without plan. They occur as a result of anger building up in one person, in another person, in another person within one space, that they cannot contain the anger anymore but bolt it outside. You've seen that with the Tanzania, for example. The demonstrations in Tanzania could not have been said to have been financed by a particular candidate. It was the anger inside the people of Tanzania that built up, and they could not contain it anymore, so they erupted in a demonstrations. If we take a look with 25th June 2024, it was also hunger that was inside the people of Kenya as a result of oppressive policies and oppressive government laws being put, including of course the finance bill of that time and additional taxes that were going to come as a result of that finance bill that led the Kenyan people to the streets. But even then, the government was so blind to that realization that the government had to find certain individuals to blame for financing those particular protests. Of course, for Tanzania, we have not had government blaming individuals within Tanzania. We've had Tanzanian officials blaming foreigners now for actually taking a part in demonstrations within their country. Here at home, we had the government blaming Rigathi Gachagua, the government blaming Ford Foundation. The government blamed a list of almost everyone who was involved in this particular financing, including going to the homes of Jimmy Wanjigi. You remember when Jimmy Wanjigi was being looked for in his house and police couldn't find him? That was part of financing demonstrations. So the government of Kenya is really, not alive to the fact that Kenyans can actually demonstrate on their own. When demonstrations are going on, the government stops demonstrations or surpasses the demonstrations through excessive force, and then after that blames and looks for someone that financed these demonstrations. So the same pattern is what is being witnessed in Ikolomani. The police, instead of addressing the issues of a substantive public participation and compensation as what the public is looking for in the Ikolomani gold issue, is now accusing MCAs, and the police feels like this matter has been financed by certain MCAs who are now having Ikolomani people actually protest against that particular gold deal. But residents maintain that chaos erupted from their own anger, and it was not politically sponsored. If anything, these particular residents have been asking where the political leaders are since this particular Ikolomani issue began. So asking where the political leaders are, yet the government is blaming their political leaders for financing their own demonstration, is of course a very laughable and insensitive position coming from the government. So there are unanswered questions, and some of them we will detail for you here at the People's Mirror around this Ikolomani matter. Number one is, who is this British company? Now, I want you to understand something very critical right now in the Kenyan political and economic space. We have sold so many things. We have sold the Bomas of Kenya. I was just writing them down somewhere. We have sold the Bomas of Kenya. We have entered into arrangement with Uganda to manage the Kenya Pipeline Corporation. We are selling 15% of our stakes in Safaricom, and of course now we are selling gold in Kakamega to some British company to refine. So the first question is, who is this British company? And we need to know where the British company is located, the incorporation documents of the British company. We need to know the CR8, the directors of the company, and where they stay that form this particular company. We need to see the articles of association for this company and every detail that forms the Shanta company and every involvement that it has with any local to actually verify whether it is an independent company in this particular stakes. Because from the way it's looking and the way the citizens of Ikolomani are being treated for this particular gold mining issue, it seems that individual interests are very, very high in this particular mining stuff. And so to know the company and the directors of the company and the particulars of the company will give us a clear visibility on who is behind the deaths in Ikolomani as a result of this particular gold mine. Another question that we need to answer is, why were locals informed late about gold in this Ikolomani issue? We know very well that Ikolomani area has been having artisanal mining as a way of survival for quite some time, but a massive gold base to the extent of 383 billion Kenyan shillings, why were the residents not told early that this gold mine or this gold base was lying beneath their land, so that the process of evicting them would take enough time or give government enough time to prepare for preparation of alternative residences, eviction and evacuation of these people, opening of the quarry, finishing the mining and returning them back to their land as a requirement. If the government itself had started forming or installing an refinery, an oil refinery as early as 2024, then of course the government was aware. So why did they hold this information, which is very key, because access to information is a right of every Kenyan citizen. For the people of Ikolomani to be told that a gold base worth 383 billion is lying beneath your land. So the reason why this particular information was kept away from the people of Ikolomani, of course, would now be the reasons and can actually now clearly manifest in the speed within which the execution of the Ikolomani mining is being implemented. Then other than that, there's also another question that we need to put a rest to. Why was 800 families located in this particular area evicted without public participation? Of course, even if the eviction has not completed the entire 800 homes, even if one home was already evicted or two as part of the 800 homes, then why did that eviction take place without a formal public participation taking place to its completion and enough compensation as per the requirement of the law following suit? So that has not happened. Then the last question we will also want the government to put a rest to is why the process is rushed. If there is a gold mine that the government has found in a place like Ikolomani, for example, then it is there. It's not going anywhere. That land will forever be there in Ikolomani. No one is going to steal it from the government. So why is the process being rushed to the level that evictions of 800 families is being done, no proper compensation? Even if people are dying, the government is still moving on and having this Shanta company, run its business amidst all this. Why is the rush? So if the government can put a rest to this question, who is behind the British company? Why were the locals informed late? Why were 800 families or part of it evicted without public participation and compensation? And why is the process rushed? Then perhaps the people of Ikolomani and the entire nation will come to peace and actually say that, okay, the process in Ikolomani followed the due process of public acquisition of land called compulsory acquisition, where the government can actually acquire any piece of land that they need to acquire for the development of the nation. And of course, this is just a public information out there to even the people of Ikolomani. all land belongs to the state primarily. So even a private land that you own, the government can come and take it if the government feels like it's part of nation building or by taking your land. And the only thing that you are entitled to is, of course, prior and proper notice, and other than that, adequate compensation to its end. But the government can walk in anywhere right now and take any land that they deem fit as per the new constitution. And so that land does not belong to the people of Ikolomani. But even to that end, the people of Ikolomani deserve to be taken through the proper processes of the law for compulsory acquisition, including adequate compensation, before they leave that piece of land for the government to do whatever they want to do with it. Now, the residents have been calling upon the leaders to help them, and as I said when I started this particular episode, is that where is Mudavadi, where is Boni Kalwale, where is Wetangula? That is what the residents were asking. And now, two leaders have answered to the call of the residents. Boni Kalwale and Natembeya have actually made public statements now considering Ikolomani's issue, and Mr. Natembeya and Boni Kalwale, who stepped up to the scene to make these particular statements, said certain key things. Mr. Natembeya actually echoed what we have just said right now, that for a long time Ikolomani has been relying on artisanal mining for survival, and so they have done this for quite some time, that their entire livelihood, rather you would say, depends on it. And if you know the history of the Luhya nation, you know that the Luhya nation is struggling a lot with poverty because of seclusion from national resources for quite some time. And so this is the source of livelihood to a lot of families, and by source of livelihood to a lot of families, it's not just about food being put on the table for them. This is what pays fees for students. This is the only chance that they also have to secure better medical conditions after mining. Like literally, the artisanal mining in Ikolomani is the basis of the future for the second generation that the Luhya people are creating. And so now they are rejecting the attempt of the government to come and take away their source of livelihood from them, yet the very government has segregated them when it comes to allocation of resources since the time that the country was incepted. And now 337 acres of land in Ikolomani with over 800 families, as we said in the beginning, is now being evicted and being cut off from their source of livelihood as a result of a government's desire to invest in gold mine that has been found in that area. Compensation to these family homes, as I said, out of the 383 billion now, Natembeya says is just but 3 billion. Of course, they're saying 3 billion out of 383 billion is really insensitive, considering this is a place that has an ancestral touch to the people that are being evicted, an economic touch to the people that are being evicted, and this has been their home. Other than that, he talks of the excessive use of force that was witnessed in Ikolomani, saying, to what extent would police react killing over 4 people in one day? To what extent would it call for police to do that for residents who are just asking the government to kindly follow the process of the law when it comes to exploiting the gold in their particular backyard? So Natembeya and Honorable Boni Kalwale have since really condemned the actions of the government when it comes to Ikolomani and the gold mine and how the process is being run. Boni Kalwale actually questioned the Shanta company, of course, asking the government to provide full details of what company this is. And Mr. Natembeya echoed the statements of the residents, saying that we are witnessing a government that is prioritizing economic benefit of a white person over the comfort and survival of its own locals. Now, of course, Kenya has to develop and we have to get to Singapore, but at what cost? At what cost do we have to get to Singapore? If getting to Singapore means that fresh graves of our loved ones will now be unearthed, if getting to Singapore means that our mothers and our grandmothers will be tear-gassed when government finds some platinum lying underneath their homes, at what cost does development come if that very development interrupts the livelihood of its citizens? Now, away from that story, there was a statement that was being made by Malala. Malala is the former Secretary General of the UDA party, and he was just attacking the UDA party largely, and he also touched on that story. So we will touch on Malala's speech, on the part that attacked this particular Ikolomani issue, and also briefly on the rest of it. You see, Malala avoided having rather direct conversations about Ikolomani issue with the people of Ikolomani, and went ahead to say that Ruto's child now owns 72,000 acres in Luhya land. Of course, we are talking about 323 acres where 800 families live, being evicted for gold mine. And Malala informs us that now President Ruto's child, leave alone President Ruto himself, owns 72,000 acres of land in Luhya land. Not verified, but statements of Malala from his speech. So let's delve into this. Malala says that he has also never given Kenyans an opportunity, or rather to explain himself on why they had a rift with President Ruto. And so in this particular meeting in Kisa East Ward, which was an homecoming of the current Kisa East Ward member of County Assembly, an event that ought to have been attended including by Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, and we detailed it here yesterday in our episode of the People's Mirror, Mr. Malala now found an opportunity to address the nation and tell the people of Kenya why he ended his relationship with President Ruto. And number one, you see that he avoided having blood in his hands, saying that as the Secretary General of the UDA party at the time that the 25th June 2024 protests were actually taking place, he allegedly received an order from President Ruto to have people shot. And so when he did not act upon that order as an UDA Secretary General, then his friendship started to deteriorate with President William Ruto. He says that that was also the same day that his party leader Rigathi Gachagua left the conference of Nairobi to Mombasa to make an alternative press conference, because Ruto had also given the same instructions to Rigathi Gachagua. Then he says that he was asked to sign on the impeachment motion of Rigathi Gachagua and he refused. Again, he says that this was as a result of his position as the Secretary General, something that he says he did not do. Then he now claims that these two occurrences formed the basis of their fallout with President Ruto. He recollects that at one point Ruto gave he recollects that at one point Ruto gave him conditions that if he did not meet either signing of the Rigathi Gachagua's impeachment, and of course the first time that he had faulted from following the orders as a UDA Secretary General, then his was the door. And now he tells the people of Kenya that, you remember at one point Ruto gave 3 conditions to an Indian and said that Indian was supposed to do what? Meet all those 3 conditions. The third one was to go to heaven, something of the sort. And now it turns out that the very Indian that was being given these conditions to exit the country is now the very Indian that was saying in a meeting that Ruto had with President Museveni in Uganda that President Ruto deserves to lead this country for over 20 years. So Devki, who made this particular statement as a result of a new steel company that was being formed in Uganda, and as part of this particular cooperation with the Uganda in the KPC issue, is also the same Muindi, or among the very Muindi that Ruto had given 3 conditions to leave prior. And so now Malala tells us that the only thing that shifted the relationship from 3 conditions you go to Ruto should lead for 20 years is the fact that now Ruto's children have been included as shareholders in Devki companies. So he says he knows a lot of things because he was the Secretary General of the UDA party, and as a result of this particular inclusion of Ruto's hires in this particular company, now the Devki company is pro-Ruto for like 20 years moving forward. And so he says that as a result of that very particular arrangement, he also has information. These are Malala statements and not statements of the public mirror at what cost. He says that now he has information that Ruto's child has 72,000 acres in Luhya land, yet some lawyers cannot even own an acre of land to raise their families in that particular area. He says that now the Ikolomani saga is a revelation that Ruto has actually been having a plan to possess land in Luhya land for quite some time, and the fact that this refinery has been in place for quite a longer time ahead of the beginning of the project shows that it was a plan that Ruto had about a year ago. Mr. Malala still attacks President Ruto with the further statement saying that Shanta Company is actually Ruto's company that he has formed abroad. And so this narrows down to what Boni Kalwale was saying. We really need to know who are the right directors of this company that is refining and mining gold in Kakamega, because now from the former UDA Secretary General there are allegations that the owners of this company could also include the President of the Republic. He also talks about how did Ruto know that there was gold to build a refinery a year ahead, something that we are touched about, and that this is a plan seen as a deviation. Yes, this was a very interesting thing when he's talking about this plant being seen as a deviation. You remember sometimes back, President Ruto's name, of course, was also being mentioned in the RSF war in Sudan, and others were of the idea that because now this gold comes from Sudan allegedly to Kenya, then to Dubai, it will bring a lot of issues between the relationship of Kenya and Sudan. And so others have looked at the Ikolomani issue as a deviation and a distraction, a creation of a refinery farm away from the city into allegedly a place with some small artisanal mining, exiting the entire community from that area and leaving an open quarry and open refinery to a control of just the government and a white company. The real essence of it from this particular group of analytics is that Kenya does not have that much gold that President Ruto is saying is in Ikolomani, but there is need to set up a gold refinery in Kenya to refine the gold that is coming from Sudan before this gold finds its way in the Arab state. And Kenya cannot do that refinery without first claiming that they have found gold. And so as a result, it explains the entire Ikolomani stuff, that perhaps there's really no gold in Ikolomani. It's just a setup of a refinery where an artisanal mining has been going on for quite some time, so you can justify that there's gold in that area. Then set up your refinery, have a white person watch doing the mining and doing the refining, because that is someone under your instruction. Take the public eye away from it by first exiting 800 families away from that, so you know it will be a private government white man arrangement, and in it all, receive all the gold from Sudan, refine it in your refinery, and then take it out to Dubai. That way the country will be justified because they have a gold mining and refinery, don't they? So that particular approach is also what others are saying, that this could be a move that is in place to actually just, you know, encourage the war in Sudan and provide now a very sufficient platform for refinery of gold in Kenya before the gold leaves the confines of East Africa for bigger bidders abroad. So now Ruto's government and Ruto's tenure has seen the selling of Boomers of Kenya, the selling of the KPC, it's seeing the selling of 15% shares in Safaricom, and of course the invention of a gold mine in Kakamega that we will live to see its future. Other than that, there is a current update that the former CS Aisha Jumwa has now left the UDA party to join hands with the PAA party that belongs to Amason Kingi as a way of reclaiming the Kilifi votes in 2027, where Aisha Jumwa tends to vie as the governor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been very interesting recapping for you the Ikolomani saga, the statements around it, and the Aisha Jumwa update. Until our next episode.